What we have a difference of tonight as an audience is we get to hear directly from you guys who put this together, and Paul, who was obviously the instrumental figure in this, and we have a chance to hear what's next. And that, I'm just going to give you this microphone right now, though. That's the microphone that we have for you guys, but I'm just going to hand this over to you, Paul. What's next?
Well, as my brother Patrick, first of all, this is the first time I've been on a stage, and you can't see anything out there. It's like I'm talking to an empty room. As Patrick said, hopefully what this is the end of Act 2. So the case is currently pending on appeal, and this is like a legal law school kind of analysis. It gets technical. The bottom line is that the federal judge rejected our legal theory. And so we had to appeal that up to the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit has taken a couple of different actions to review whether or not the judge made the right legal rulings and the right factual rulings. And for a lot of T reading, we feel fairly confident that we have a good shot at the Fourth Circuit reversing the judge's legal rulings and sending the case back down for an Act 3. Maybe I'm trying to read the glass is half full, but I believe in my heart this story isn't over. I believe the fight isn't over, and that I believe that hopefully by the end of the year, you'll be reporting that there's a new act, a part 3 to this, and if we get our chances, we're gonna try to do something magic.
Clay, I'm going to have you introduce the other folks up here on stage. I think that microphone should stretch, so.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello. I'm Clay Tweel. I'm the director of the movie. This is Shannon Riggs and Tim Grant, our producers of the film.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that it was stretched so people would be able to get a chance to hear from. We have some questions, and we want to get to those right away because we know it's getting late. And questions are coming in from the audience. The one question is anything being done to help with their going forward? Is there anything being done to help with, and for example, places like Lily's Place, the site, Old Highland Elementary, since the funding did not come through? And that question could be more universal in the Huntington area. Are there plans in place for if in fact there is success? Have you as a filmmaker heard about that, or Paul, have you heard anything? And I'll be happy to run this microphone down to you if you need.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot.
Okay.
So we've recovered somewhere around $60 billion nationwide. The reason West Virginia didn't participate in a number of the early settlements is because the rest of the other 49 states decided to allocate us 0.89%. And our Attorney General in every city and county in the state said, this is not right. We're not gonna let Texas, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina dictate the distribution of settlement proceeds based on population. So we decided as a state that we were going to forge our own way. And part of that was having the courage and the ability to go to trial and force a West Virginia resolution. So far, through all of the other settlements, we've recovered almost $1 billion for the state of West Virginia. While we lost this fight, we lost this skirmish, we have, on behalf of the state, done proportionately well. And we've created a foundation called the West Virginia First Foundation that receives approximately 80% of all the proceeds, 75% of the proceeds go into a foundation to fund programs just like that. So while we may have lost this battle for Huntington and Cabell, the war in West Virginia, we are winning. We are starting to make grounds. And what my hope is that if we have the opportunity at the tail end of this litigation my hope is that we are able to come back and on behalf of Huntington and Cabell do something extraordinary. But we are funding initiatives with nonprofits. We have clinical programs. We have Lily's Place. We have healthcare providers across the state. And what I'm truly proud of, I think, is that if you look back 10, 15 years ago, we looked at addiction in a different way. And we looked at addiction as a choice made by individuals. And what we understand now is that this is opium. And it's been around since the Byzantine era, right? I've always said when Pandora opened her box, the first thing that came out was opium. It toppled the Chinese empires, right? All we have done over time is found a more effective delivery mechanism for opium. And each time we figured out how to deliver opium in more potent doses to a larger group of human beings, what we have found is a new cycle of misery and pain. This one happened to be a self-inflicted wound by the American pharmaceutical industry. So we're at a different cycle now. We have a different evolution, a different iteration. But the tail end of this, as I've told many people, is that our programs need to be not just looking at those that are suffering from substance abuse. We need to remember the children that are impacted. You saw the slide that was up on there. 20% of the babies that were born for a period of time in Cabell County had NAS, neonatal abstinence syndrome. 20%, 1 out of 5 babies born in this town were born addicted to opioids. And we don't know yet the neurological long-term impacts of that. So to answer your question, yes, we have programs in place, and that this is the tail of the dragon. It's going to be there for a while.
You know, I did notice that one thing, and I'm sure you noticed that too. As an audience, you kept using that word opium, and that's something that you haven't, or at least I haven't heard that. I've heard of, the opioid crisis, opioid. Well, obviously it's a derivative of opium, but you kept using that word opium. Is that something, did you actually use that in court at all? Because we couldn't, obviously,
So
as Clay pointed out, there were no cameras allowed, so we couldn't see what was going on.
yes, I said the word opium as many times as I could.
Okay.
Is that these weren't opioids, these weren't pills, these weren't prescriptions. This was pharmaceutical grade opium that was manufactured in America, put into a little pill, and distributed by the millions. So for the numbers, Cabell County between 2006 and 2012, the distributors brought in delivery vans and sold 81 million prescription opioids to pharmacies in Cabell County. So just think about that. 81 million pills of opium were delivered to pharmacies in Cabell County, West Virginia between 2006 and 2012. It was a tsunami of opium pills. And now, can anybody wonder why we have an opium problem?
Which led to other problems, and now fentanyl, and now there's something even stronger than fentanyl out there. I want to hear from the other people up here on stage. I think it's really important, but I do have one more thing I'd like to ask you, and this is what happens when people are watching a documentary like this, and there's a subject, and the subject is you in this case, and I'm curious, and I'm sure the audience is curious, how are you doing? I mean, I really mean that. I mean, how are you doing? Because you watch this film and you go, oh my gosh, this poor guy. Oh, how's he? And then everybody's along for the ride with you. You're an audience members become invested in this. And I hate to use the word character, but in a drama, it is a character. You're the real life person. People want to know, how are you doing after all of that? How are you doing today in this year?
Yeah, I'm doing swell. The only thing worse than losing the biggest case of your career is to have someone make a movie about it. So let me say this: is I have an amazing family. I have a mother who, from a a very young age taught me to believe in some higher power and higher purpose, right? What I can tell you is that you can see levels of exhaustion by me throughout this film. I've got a number of my friends that are here. And so I saw Jeff Maynard, I saw Lee Heichel, Ronnie Atkins, guys I grew up with. They probably saw a level of exhaustion they hadn't seen before. You know, my children, you know, saw it firsthand. But what I can tell you is this, is that as I walked along the path, I knew I could, it was lit for me. There were guardrails on either side, and that when I was the most tired, there was somebody waiting for me at the next mile marker to help with the next step of the journey. That's when, you know, I ran into Mike Fuller, who's my law partner. Pearl Robertson came all the way in. You know, there are people that are here that can attest to the fact that this was exhausting. Had we won, everybody would have said, wow, all of that exhausting work paid off. But when you look at the result now, it is a personal loss. But like any heroic story, right, is that there is a period of time when the trial is over and then you have the triumph. So there's a couple of fantastic portions of this that Tim caught, right? And this guy here deserves a sainthood for being with me and capturing moments when I probably wasn't of the greatest patience. There are a couple of moments that I thought were very poignant. One of them is, I meant it when I said magic or tragic. I meant it. And I probably said that phrase, I don't know how many times, is that this was an event that was not something that could be swept under the rug. This was a reckoning. And I meant it when I said at the very end, and that was you in the car with me, and I remember it because it was my 50th birthday when I found out we lost the case, that I would rather stand up in defiance to fight for what is right, even though I know that it's crushing to be told I'm wrong. The question is once we get through this Fourth Circuit appeal, there could be an addendum to this story, and if that happens, then the mayor and county commission are going to have to figure out, you know, what resources we're going to have to be able to make a difference here, and maybe we turn this tragic story into something magic.
Yeah, we saw the birthday, and I saw the 50, and I was like, I wonder whose birthday that is. Nah, it can't be his.
No.
There's no way that fate could be that cruel. But it does lead me to a question that I'm going to ask an opinion, or maybe you've heard something, I don't know, but I'm going to ask it because is it possible, and this goes along with the question that we got from somebody, is the federal judge still seated? Has he been investigated? I'm not sure what the investigation would be, but is it possible that judge, and I'm not partially joking, but not really, is it possible the judge in the case knew that the release date was your 50th birthday? Did you ever think about that?
Yeah, listen.
Did you?
I'll just say, it was also the 4th of July. And so that is what, from what I could tell, the way to bury the story coming out, the news story, is that it was a way to release it at 5 o'clock on the 4th of July, which is why we barely caught it on camera. Paul called us and was like, can you get here in the next couple hours because we think it's going to come out. We got there. I started filming Pearl 30 seconds before it came in, I think.
So let me say a couple of things. Number one, this case is going to go back to the same federal judge. Okay? Judge Faber is one of the finest, most respected legal jurists in the history of this state. I would call him old school. And to be fair, the case that I brought was novel. Nobody had ever done it before. And so there is something to be said for a federal judge to say, if you're going to do something new, we're going to test its mettle, right? We're going to test its legal validity. So I don't think there was any malice. I don't think there was I disagree with his legal reasoning. I believe that the public nuisance theory of liability, we extended in a way that's consistent with the history of the doctrine. This judge disagreed. Other judges have agreed. That's why we have an appeal system. The reason he issued the opinion on the date that he did was because on July 5th, I was standing up to start a new trial on behalf of a different county. And so I feel like he felt pressured that with me standing up Monday morning, July 5 at 9 a.m. to start a new trial, that he was doing his best to try to get this opinion out to give guidance to the next judge. So I don't think there's anything here other than I had a judge that made a legal ruling, and based on his legal ruling, a set of factual conclusions resulted. We're challenging that legal ruling. And if we're right, if the Fourth Circuit, the appeal court, decides we're right and that the standard is different, this judge is going to have to apply the facts all over again. And I believe, as I've said many times, if we're correct on the legal standard, I think we win.
Clay, I'd like to ask you a question about how, and we talked about this today on the air, and so if anybody saw that, I hate to reiterate this, but talk about how you first came into hearing about this case, and then at what point after hearing about this case did you think, as a filmmaker, you were going to do, this was going to be your next project?
Yeah, so both sides of my family, my parents who are here are from Huntington, and my uncle Larry was once Paul's law partner, and we had both just read, Larry and I had both just read Dreamland, and we're talking about it, the book, over the holidays, and he said, you know, my partner Paul Farrell is going to possibly be taking up these cases in West Virginia in a new way, and I think it's got a lot of potential. And so I called Paul, and I got his number, and I'll never forget the first conversation with him. You quoted Sun Tzu and Star Wars within the same sentence, and I was just like, oh man, this guy's a good character, and he's a good storyteller. I mean, as somebody, as you all can tell, like, it makes my job a lot easier, someone who can distill very complicated ideas in an efficient, compact way, and can, like, yeah, it's just a good storyteller. I think a lot of good lawyers are good storytellers. So,
is that what went into, because you could have a really good story to tell and not have a good storyteller or a series of storytellers. After, you know, meeting and talking, did you think, I think we're going to do this now? Well, yeah, is that when it kind of hit you after you got to know this guy?
Yeah, it took only a brief couple conversations, and I could feel the potential for the case, and I think that coming from spending so much time in this area, growing up and being around here and seeing what the opioid crisis had sort of done and how it had impacted the community and impacted, I think, myself and a lot of people I knew, that I felt like it was an important story to tell, and I wanted personally some sense of, you know, transparency and accountability for what the hell happened. And that was some of the first words out of Paul's mouth, and I immediately knew that we were aligned in our mission, and that allows for a partnership and a certain amount of trust. It takes a lot of trust between people that you're filming and getting in their cars and their houses and they're talking to their family. Like, it's a pretty intimate relationship, and yeah. So it was something that very early on I saw we were on the same page for.
This may have been answered partially at the end before the final credits roll with talk of the work that Congress did, but one person asked, going forward, will there be a way to keep track of distribution data locally? Is a local monitoring system a possibility? Was that addressed with the work of Congress, or is that something that would have to be done specifically in a county by county look?
Yeah, so we've renewed our ARCOS data requests. all the way up through the year 2022 now. And every time we get the new data, we publish it on the internet. So the federal government's not doing it, but if you go to slcg.com and click on the opioid tab, you can trace every pill to every pharmacy in America from the year 2006 to 2022.
That's interesting. Another person asks, why do they say the state's broke when there was $1 billion surplus of taxpayer money not being used for the taxpayers? I guess that would be something we'd have to talk with the former governor about.
So let's be clear about what we did. We did not want the money to be put into the state treasury for the legislature to decide what to do with the money. When we settled the tobacco cases, we used the tobacco settlement to retire our workers' comp debt and start Brick Street. I didn't want this money to be lost into the state treasury and spent on anything other than opioid abatement. But I also knew that as a lawyer, I'm not smart enough to know what the right thing to do is, so we created a foundation. You can find it online, the West Virginia First Foundation. The governor appoints 5 members of the panel, 6 regions in West Virginia, each pick an additional board member, and they have an advisory board with what I call guardrails, and they're only allowed to spend the money on a healthcare abatement plan drafted by Johns Hopkins School of Public Health to abate the opioid epidemic. So this isn't West Virginia state treasury money. This is a foundation, a public-private foundation, to hold and invest the money and only spend it in terms of how this state can address the opioid epidemic.
Another question concerning money. Somebody asks, if the county wins the money, can it be spent on resources in all of West Virginia to address the resource disparity throughout the state that drives people to Huntington? And this is something you hear about a lot, where people will say, well, for example, I spoke with the mayor of Ashland, Kentucky, who said that when you are a community that offers services, people will, if you build it, they will come. People will come for the services. And he said, and then nearby Russell and some other areas, they don't offer services. So you're not going to find people in tents or looking for services in these communities. That's kind of what this person is getting at, is will there be, for example, more money for a city like Huntington than there would a city that doesn't offer those services?
So
has that been discussed?
There's 2 parts to this. One is you asked if there's a settlement or a verdict in the city of Huntington case or Calhoun County case. We're not going to count any money. We lost the case. We're on appeal.
Don't count the chicken.
Don't. Yeah. Now, if we are to prevail, then we're going to have discussions that I welcome us to have. I pray that we have. All that being said, is that we purposely created a statewide foundation to be able to address disparities with healthcare access, and that's very much on our minds.
Okay. I'd like to hear from our other 2 members on stage about your role in this film, and I guess honor is the word, because it's quite a cause, and it's probably. And maybe it's not. I was going to say, is it unlike any other film that you've worked on before? And if so, how? And if not, then how are films similar when it comes to somebody telling a story like this? Tim?
Sure. It's certainly unlike any film I've ever worked on, because Paul is unlike any person I've ever met. This was just such a unique and thrilling and honestly touching experience for me to be a part of. So while Paul thanks me, and I think you said I was a saint, was that what you said? Oh, wow, all right. I just have to say a big thank you to Paul and to his family, because they welcomed me. I spent a lot of time out here in this great place, and the first portion of production was primarily myself and Ben Joyner, who was our cinematographer. while Clay and Shannon here organized how we were going to really attack this massive story, because it is so complicated. So so for me, it was pretty daunting, but this place, you all, the Farrells, welcomed me, and it meant a lot to me. And to watch this guy do what he did and distill it down into this film, but for me to watch it day to day, it was quite honestly as exciting as this film distilled down into 2 hours was every day. So the work that went into this was very inspiring for me to work hard to try my best to capture it. And once Clay and I started working together in the field, because filming this, I'm sure that you can kind of gather throughout the film, because there are timestamps. It took 5 years to film this, so that meant that we were following Paul around for 5 years. You know, we weren't there every day. We were probably there every fourth day. But the amount of travel, the amount of energy that it takes to do something like this is absolutely tremendous. So it was an inspiration to me, honestly. So, and then there are so many people here that helped out. That you know, we started in 2017. And that was really after this wave, and you all know this firsthand, of so many media outlets coming in, and really, in my opinion, some of them did this place wrong by extracting so much. And we could tell that Huntington was tired of, you know, having people come in and tell the same story over and over about having it be the opioid kind of hub, epidemic central, and so for Huntington to kind of open us regardless of that, open themselves to us regardless of that. So many people, Gordon Mary, Robert Stinnett, who are in the film, that they said, you know what, we're tired, but this is important. Like, we need to be vulnerable and show what it's done to our community in an effort to try and make it better. That was invaluable to us. Without you all, this movie just absolutely does not happen. So just a big, big thank you. And yeah, give yourself. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Shannon here, but I just have to say that Shannon is such a in this. The division here was all of my deficiencies Shannon made up for and more. So I just want to say thanks, Shannon. You are such a good teammate, and thank you so much.
So I'm also one of the producers on the project, and it was also very different in that for like kind of what I do, we have to keep this train going without knowing when it's going to end. And it did go for a really long time, and so the money has to last, you know, without knowing for how long. So that's obviously, and like just the logistics of keeping this going. Also, the stakes are so high, and so we wanted to make sure anything that we were doing would never have a negative impact on the case and everything that Paul and all the lawyers were doing. And so that requires just like a lot of careful planning on our side to make sure that we are never like a problem for the thing that we're following, because this isn't just a story about people. This is like, the stakes were just so incredibly high. So that made this a really unique process for us, I think.
How do you, as somebody who's been working on films, how do you rank something like this? I don't want, not like, 1 to 10, I don't mean like that, but I mean when you think of some of the other work that you've done, how does this compare to, because this is, I'm sure every film is different and every story is different. How is this different from some of the other films that you've made, what made this, every project has a special little thing. What made this thing I mean, and don't just say Paul, because I mean, we love Paul, but we know that's what you were going to say. But what else makes this film really stand out and the story stand out? What makes it different from other movies that you worked on and other documentaries?
We do get this question asked kind of a lot. Clay, you have the best answer.
Which is what? No, go ahead.
Well, I'll answer Clay's answer, because we just got asked this question recently, but we kind of shared it, is like, this because of your your family's from here. And so this has mattered so much to you, like just a personal investment. You don't always tell stories that are about where you have like a personal investment in that way. And this has been like a child for all of us for 8 years now, where this has been, we wake up every day thinking about this all day, you know, like this is what we think about all day, every day. Not unlike, we feel like we will not say that our documentary is on the same level as the case in any way, but we have been on a very similar journey.
Well, you've been embedded. You're like reporters who get embedded in war situations, and you know they get to know the troops that they're embedded with. A guy that I know was embedded. He used to work at WSAZ and spent time. Mike Tobin, he works with Fox News now, but he worked at WSAZ, and he was embedded, and he said that you do feel that kinship. You feel like you're one with what you're covering. I'm sure that you guys and Paul shared the same kind of anticipation of that decision, right? Yeah. When the decision was pending, I'm sure you were probably all on pins and needles chewing your fingernails.
For sure. I mean, the other thing that's unique about this compared to any other project that I've made is the emphasis on wanting it to be as experiential as possible and to really give the audience a peek behind the curtain of sort of what the day-to-day and grind of this was. I think we shot 220 days over those 5 years. And I mean, just for an example, there's some series that have been made or that we've made that were shot in 25 days, like 3-part series for Netflix, 25 days of shooting. This is a 90-minute movie that had 220 days of shooting because we just wanted to be in it and be there, and that to me made this a very unique experience, and hopefully one that translated into sort of the power of the story.
Can you talk about what's next as far as the documentary goes, and where people are going to be able to see it, and when, and how it will be streamed, and then I'm going to ask you one more question after that, the logistic question.
So the movie got acquired by PBS and their platform POV. And so it will be on the PBS, it'll be premiering on PBS nationally on September 22nd. So you can all watch it there on your local station. And then it'll be on the PBS app until I think mid-December. And you can watch it for free on the PBS app in the sort of POV section of films. Please, share and tell if you liked it, tell people in the community, tell your friends, tell family to watch it. And then for the next, I think, few years after that, it'll be on PBS stations all over this country, and they'll be able to, this individual station managers can program it whenever they feel like it, and we're going to try to have some more community screenings throughout the U.S. as well.
Do you have plans right now for possibly recognition through awards programs, film festivals, that kind of thing going forward?
We did a lot of film festivals last year with the film. We premiered at Full Frame down in North Carolina and DC Docs and Santa Barbara. We did a bunch of film festivals then, and the Virginia Film Festival, we won an award there. So it's done its festival run, and now it's coming out for the public to see.
Okay. Another question I'd like to ask, and probably all three of you, is describe that feeling of watching the film, the finished product. And I hear different things on this, and that's why I'm curious to get your take on it, because you hear from people, Hollywood stars who say, I haven't watched that film since it came out. And then you'll hear from somebody who worked on it and said, I couldn't do it again, I couldn't watch it. And then you'll hear from somebody who said, I've watched it 100 times. What's your take on sitting down and watching this film?
I mean, everyone is different. For me personally, with almost every yeah, every other film that I've made, I have, because I edit as well, and so I'm just like in the edit, watching scenes and clips over and over and over again, and in order to finish a film, you're doing the color and you're doing the sound, you're making sure every little thing is right, and so that once I usually premiere it at a film festival, I never watch it again. But with this movie, I sat and watched it tonight. This movie for me sits different, and so I've watched it at almost every festival. I'm gonna watch it, we have a screening in LA this weekend, I'll watch it again. This one's different for me.
What do people outside this area say? And that's something all three of you, when you see audience members, or you hear from audience members, or you hear from people who have watched this for the first time and they haven't heard this story or really know much about it because they haven't paid too much attention to the crisis on this side of the country, perhaps. What do people say?
I mean, one of to answer the first question, as part of the second question, one of the coolest experiences I've had watching a movie that I worked on was for sure at the Full Frame Film Festival. It was a packed, huge, beautiful theater, and Paul was there. And it was I had seen the movie a million times. You really watch it to get it perfect. And it was a whole entirely new experience watching it with Paul watching it in an audience. There was something, it's as the filmmaker, it's a strange experience to watch the movie that you made and sort of feel to imagine what it must feel like to be the person on screen seeing it for the first time with there was 1,000 people. It was a huge audience, and I can't even imagine what it must be like for him to be watching it in a room with all those people. And so you're just sitting there trying to imagine being him, and he got a standing ovation. It was such a wild experience. For all of us, and people were coming up afterwards and really sharing their own stories of family members and the way that they've been affected. And it was a really, really, it was a really good experience, and just really fulfilling and satisfying experience as a filmmaker to just be in the room with all of us, all the people, all of us who made it. And I don't know how Paul felt, but you could just sort of feel oh man, that's got to be something strange to go through, seeing yourself for the first time with a bunch of other people. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and this happens with every film probably to some degree, but for this one, because it took so many days, the feeling of watching your life condensed is very wild. And just to feel oh, we were filming and I was, after we filmed, I went to this place and hung out with these friends, and to have that happen 200 times in a movie, just personally is, to see it all collapsed like that is very interesting. I can't imagine what it feels like for Paul, because there's another layer to it. And then also I think that the reaction is it's consistent and unfortunately, sadly, not surprising. I was talking about this film with a friend of mine yesterday who I had no idea had struggled with an addiction to opioids. And he brought it up, and he had been on, taken pills for 5 years, and I thought, well, I'm so glad you're here, So these things come out. There are so many members of my family that have struggled. So I think that, I think it's good to have these conversations to destigmatize. So it's not necessarily unique, but it is good that we have these conversations.
Paul, I think I'm going to, the final question is going to be for you, and I'd like to ask you, was there a struggle of, I don't really feel like having cameras following me around all the time. Was there a struggle of that? And this story is so important to document and tell that we have to have cameras here. Was that part of a conversation you had? Or am I way off base with that? I don't know. I just think that there might have been a little bit of was there a hesitation on your part, or were you like, gangbusters, we've got to get this movie made? Or somewhere in between, I don't know.
Yeah, like, I hated seeing myself in this movie, right? So, the reality of it is that when Larry Tweel asked me to take his nephew along with me for the first hearing in this case, it was Cabell County Commission versus the distributors, and it was me and 48 defense lawyers in a courtroom, including my Uncle Mike. And so it was literally me and 48 defense lawyers from around the country, and my Uncle Mike. And so I had the film guys with me, and I kind of thought as the cocky guy, you know, you guys wait for all the defense lawyers to come walking out and then come up to me and say, you know, with a microphone. So there was some hubris to it. There was some, but it wasn't real for me. And then when the novelty wore off of that moment, I did have a moment of reflection that for me to do this, I need transparency. And what better way to show all the defense lawyers, to show the Fortune 500 companies, what better way to show you what transparency looks like than to be transparent? And so in some weird way, I couldn't stand the film people being around. I thought they were in my way. I thought they were, you know, if you were to know the number of times they asked me the same question over and over so that I could say it with the right intonation to make the film. And then when the gravity of the case set in, I realized that this was a piece of history that needs to be told, magic or tragic.
Magic or tragic, there it is again. So I do want to, I said that was the last question, but I do want to offer you all a chance to say one final thing, if you'd like, to the audience, to Paul, to each other.
Well,
I put you on the spot.
All of a sudden there was a lot of pressure, I don't know. Well, I want to just say a couple more thank yous, just real quick. Jan Rader, thank you so much for being a part of this. And Steve Williams, I'm not sure if Mayor Steve is here, but he was also so gracious with his time. So, and then again, thank you to you all. You know, I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, I'll pass it along.
It's gonna be hard to top thanking Huntington, but like really that's, you know, like it's a big deal to let us into your lives. And we drove around today and I saw so many of the locations from the film, and that was like really kind of touching. So yeah, just, it's always, thanks for letting us into your lives.
Yep. Clay?
Yeah, I echo that in spades. This community means a lot to me, to my family, where we came from. So I hope you enjoyed the movie, and yeah, thanks for letting us be here and screen it for you.
Clay said the only way he's going to top it is his next documentary on Camden Park. So I just totally made that up. Thank you all for being here this evening, and thanks to you all for being up on stage with us.